Thank you so much, Vance. I appreciate the introduction. I'm rather disappointed that you didn't go with Reverend Jeff is in the house. That would have been great. That would have been
All right.
great. So, um, one thing that I wanted to mention also before we get started, um, I have a presence here on New Thought Media Network with a show called Divine Science Everywhere with a couple of other divine science ministers. You will find that on the New Thought Media Network Facebook page and also on their YouTube channel. We broadcast live on Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. Eastern. No, that's 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. And then later on in the evening, I join Reverend Michael Mangus for the Friday Fireside Chat, also on New Thought Media Network. You'll find that at 8 o'clock Eastern and 7 o'clock Central. So thank you very much for having me, Midtown. It's great to be back. I had such a wonderful time the last time I was here, and to be asked to come join you again was just a thrill. And as you can see, my talk title was inspired by that awesome Tracy Chapman song because we are here now on the cusp of a brand new year. And the New Year celebration is always about new beginnings. It's been a symbolic thing for millennia, actually. The New Year's over. We're ready to start fresh and to begin again. And this time of year, I'm always reminded of the Roman god Janus, which is where we get the word January. He was the god of beginnings and endings. He was the god of gates and transitions and doorways and passages. And he was depicted as being having a double-sided head. He had two faces, basically, one that looked backward into the past and the other that looked forward into the future. So as a god of transitions, he had functions pertaining to life and death, uh, war and peace, things of that nature. So as we stand at the doorway, getting ready to walk out of the room called 2025 and into the room of 2026, somebody invariably brings up the subject of New Year's resolutions. Local TV crews will send out street reporters and they'll grab people by the elbow and they'll say, "Are you making a resolution this year? What are they?" And people are always happy to answer that question. The only thing is that resolutions tend to be funny little things. People either love them or they hate them. They make them or they don't. The people who make resolutions do so because they have lofty dreams and pie in the sky visions of the new and better life they're going to have. And the folks who don't make resolutions tend to make fun of the people who do because most of those who make the resolutions only keep them for about a couple of weeks and then they just kind of drop off. People tend to lose interest. Studies have shown 2 weeks is about the length of time the majority of people keep their resolutions. Resolutions begin as ideas that a person's good is something that's separate from them, that it's out there as a future event. It's existing in some sort of nebulous yet to be. People wait for their good to drop out of the sky and into their laps. And did you hear Tracy Chapman sing about that? She said people standing in the welfare lines waiting. And that's resolution thinking. They're waiting for their good to come to them. But see, there's the thing. There's the thing. That's an idea that seemed to be belonging to the future. And if you see it in the future, that's where it's going to stay. Because if you're waiting for somebody to give it to you and they don't deliver, well, you're stuck. That idea is still out there waiting to be manifested, and you're out there sitting there with your hands in your lap, waiting for somebody to give it to you. And people tend to give up on their good really, really quickly because they seem to think that it takes too long to manifest. And I think microwave ovens and high-speed internet have spoiled us in that respect. We're not used to waiting around. But the farmer, and I've heard this in some of the science of mind classes I've taken, and it seems like Unity uses the same analogy. Divine Science uses the same analogy as well of the farmer planting the seed. The seed's got to grow and germinate before that plant comes up and we get a harvest. And that doesn't happen overnight. So, resolutions, yeah, they're out there in the future. They're not going to happen unless something happens to make them happen. And what we do is we plant that seed from our mind and our heart into the soil of receptivity. And then we wait. But the farmer is not always inactive. He's still doing things. He's making sure that the weeds are pulled and that the ground is fertilized and watered. That's revolution thinking. Revolutions start out as funny little things like resolutions, but revolutions end up being big things because revolutions begin when people realize that the good they desire to see in their lives is already existent and that there are things that they can do to bring it into a physical reality. So, the old saying, heaven helps those who help themselves. That's how revolutions get off the ground. People take an idea and they run with it. They do what needs to be done to make it happen. What most people don't realize is that change, real change, is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It goes back to the farmer analogy. So, the events that spark revolutions, well, revolutions don't happen overnight, but the things that set them in motion, the thoughts, those can take place in an instant. But often the entire process of change takes a bit of time and a bit of patience. And so we look at Science of Mind textbook. Ernest Holmes writes, "There's no stagnation in spirit. The drive of spirit, the universe, God, and thus of ourselves, is towards circulation and flow." As English metaphysician Thomas Triller wrote, "My mind is a center of divine operation." I love this quote from him. It's a little lengthy, but it encapsulates it all so wonderfully because we can relate to it. My mind is a center of divine operation, and divine operation is always for expansion and fuller expression. And this means the production of something beyond what has gone before, something entirely new, not included in our past experiences, but proceeding out of it. Therefore, since the divine, and we're talking the big G, the big God, spirit, cannot change its inherent nature, it operates the same way in me. Consequently, in my own world, of which I am the center, it will move forward to produce new conditions, always in advance of any that have gone before. Isn't that awesome? Now, what do how does what Holmes and Troward write about the lack of stagnation, about the expansion and fuller expression? How does that fit into the revolution mindset? Well, we're always at the moment of choice. Louise Hay taught that our point of power is in the present moment, always. Each moment is an opportunity to decide what we truly want and to say, I desire to see this thing happen. Here's what I'm going to do to start the process. We've heard the expression treat and move your feet. It means we don't just pray and then wait for it to drop into our laps. It doesn't work that way. We've got to do some of the legwork ourselves. It's said that when we take a step toward a goal, the universe comes running to meet us. And it's going to meet us halfway. And it's going to do the heavy lifting. We plant the seed. We set the direction of where we want to go. Then we can take our hands off, knowing that the divine mind knows better than we do how to get from point A to point B. And sometimes we don't get to point B before we go through C, D, E, F, and G and go kind of all the way around a mulberry bush, so to speak. So we do our part, let spirit do its part, and let divine order bring it to us as it will. A resource that I found useful in moving from resolution thinking to revolution thinking is Raymond Charles Barker's book, The Power of Decision. Because Barker describes how failing to decide on what you really desire for yourself and then neglecting to follow up on that desire with concrete action, that is a decision for failure. We say things like, Well, here's a new moment, and I can make a choice. I think I'll choose to remain stuck right where I am. Well, chances are we're not saying it in those exact words. We're saying it more like, I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. Now, I don't know about everybody else. I know how I handle being overwhelmed. I freeze, I shut down, I don't do anything. Evidently, a lot of people do it the same way because we speak those words. I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed, and we do nothing. And so that desire just kind of sort of stagnates. If we always do what we always did, we're always going to get what we always got. So it's up to us. And so if we find ourselves in a rut, we have to decide, are we going to stay there, or are we going to rise up and move above all of that which has gone before? We can stay with the herd in that kind of thinking, the resolution thinking, or we can venture out into revolution thinking, which is something greater. In the 60s, the Beatles sang a song called Revolution. You say you want a revolution? Well, we all want to change the world. And they go on to say, well, when you talk about destruction, don't you know you can count me out? Another phrase from the song, and if you want money for people with minds that hate, all I can tell you, brother, is you're going to have to wait. They're speaking of moving into that revolution mindset. And finally, they admonish, you tell me it's the institution? Well, you better free your mind instead. So that's what we need to do. We need to decide that we want what we want, we desire what we desire, but we can't just wait for it. We have to go out and actually put in a little bit of work, a little bit of concrete action. You got to do something if you want your life to improve. You can't just make the resolution. You have to decide on a revolution. And the time is now, not in some far off someday. You start to choose now. And making that choice is the first step in the revolutionary process. And by not choosing to begin, you're actually working on a resolution. Now, there are going to be people out there who say, well, I made a resolution to do this or that, and it happened. That's because the moment they actually took the first step in making that resolution come to pass, they did something tangible to help the process along. They moved out of resolution thinking and into revolution thinking. So kudos to those who take that first step. Those are the ones who realize the desired change and their continued choice in the matter is what makes the revolution successful. So we're at a brand new year. It's a time for a fresh start. What are we going to change in our lives? We take a look at our lives and we say, I'd like this, I'd like that. That's the whole idea behind the New Year's resolutions, right? So we decide what it is we'd like to see happen in our lives. This is our chance for a do-over and to take it that step further from resolution to revolution. American financier and railroad tycoon Edward H. Harriman said, it's never safe to look at the future with eyes of fear. And that's where a lot of resolution thinking comes from. People see the things they want to change, and a lot of times those things are monumental, literally life-changing. And it's because they're thinking that they have to make those changes, that they put themselves under such enormous pressure. They look into the future with eyes of fear. They end up freaking themselves out. They get overwhelmed, and they do what? They do nothing. The book of Isaiah says, behold, the former things have come to pass, and I now declare new things. That's what we get to do. We get to speak those things that we'd like for our lives. We don't think of things we don't want. In a letter to the Greek city of Philippi, the Apostle Paul said, whatever's true, whatever's noble, if it's right, if it's pure, whatever's lovely, if it's excellent or praiseworthy, think on those things. We focus on our desires and our goals. We pay no heed to obstacles. Obstacles are only obstacles if we allow them to be. So instead, we turn them into stepping stones to take us to a higher level. This time of year, a few years ago, I had a brief crisis of faith. 2013 was ending and 2014 was beginning on a very sad note. I found out a couple of days prior to the new year that a friend of mine was the victim of a homicide. And at that time, his killer had not been caught. In fact, today marks 12 years since he made his involuntary transition. And my friend Brad's funeral was held on New Year's Day. So from then on, this time of year has been tinged with a touch of bittersweetness for me. It's a sadness at the loss of a friend whose presence has been keenly missed for over a decade. But I'm also happy because I had the opportunity to know him and to love him and to be a part of his life and to have him to be part of mine and to share a circle of friends that was very close knit. So I was happy to know him. There's a great metaphorical lesson to be learned through Brad's death. We buried his body because it didn't serve him any longer. He'd gone on to something greater. He'd gone on to a soul expansion, a fuller expression. So the new year is a great time to lay aside all those things that don't serve us any longer. We can put them to rest. We can bury them. We don't need them anymore. We get the chance to start anew. We get to move into an expansion, a fuller expression. In the late 1950s, a man named Charles Dedrick founded a group called Synanon, which was a self-help group community for drug abusers and alcoholics. And a saying attributed to Dedrick was very popular in the 60s. You probably have heard it, and maybe you have not heard it for a long time. But attributed to Dedrick was this phrase, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life." In the book of Revelation, the author, John of Patmos, has a vision in which he sees a new heaven and a new earth. And he quotes God as saying in the vision, "Behold, I make all things new." Well, this is something that you can have for yourself. I can have it for myself. Through faith, we allow God within to make all things new for our lives. We let the old things pass away. We bury them because they don't serve us any longer. We rise up and we walk in a newness of life. 2025 is over. 2026 is just beginning. 2025 has been quite a year for me. I discovered new opportunities. I made new friends. I came through a health crisis and had a couple of hospitalizations along the way. I saw good times and I saw bad times. I gained in some areas, I lost in some areas, but I'm better for all of it. And I'm looking forward to the new year and whatever new events and opportunities and things there are to come into my life. But the stuff that I went through that didn't serve me, I can leave it behind. I can leave it in 2025. We're at that doorway now. We're in the room of 2025. We're preparing to walk through that doorway into 2026. It's that Janus energy, the god Janus. We're walking through the doorway, through the portal, through the passage. An ending is now becoming a beginning. It's a new year. It's the first day of the rest of our lives. So how that life turns out is up to us. It's our chance to start over. It's like a spiritual Montessori school. We get as many do-overs as we want. So this is our chance. This is our time to move from resolution to revolution. And so with that in mind, let's just take just a brief moment and close our eyes and settle in, breathing in and out, knowing that as we do, breathing in, we breathe in the newness of possibility. And breathing out, we release all those things that don't serve us anymore. We breathe in again, preparing to step into everything. And we breathe out and release. Ernest Holmes said that God is spirit and spirit is substance. and substance is supply. And for most people, the word supply makes them think of money, financial things. But supply is anything we desire it to be. Whatever good we could have for our lives is supply. God is supply. So as we breathe in knowing that we are in a field of infinite potentiality. The opportunities are eternal and limitless. The only thing that stops us is ourselves. And so we breathe out the reluctance to act. We breathe out the idea that we can't have our good because we can. We're surrounded by it. So let's leave 2026 and that field of potential in our future. Let's leave it in that old mindset because it's no longer a future thing. It's a here and now thing. And as we move out of 2025, we look at all the opportunities we had, and knowing that some things worked, some things didn't, but we did the best we could with what we had to work with, which was our minds. And now we move forward with revolution thinking into 2026. And we allow that to be our truth. And we are so grateful that it is what it is. And we release and let go and trust. And so it is. Midtown, thank you again so much for allowing me to be with you today. I have had a wonderful time every time I show up here, and I look forward to maybe doing it again. Namaste.
Thanks, Reverend Jeff. Namaste. Namaskar.